Well, howdy and welcome, the virtual reality medic, coming to you from the mass casualty incident. And there's been some requests for, hey, can we go over some stuff regarding mass casualty, maybe triage? I agree, we absolutely should do that. So let's do that right now. We're going to take a look at two of these patients. Just because of time, we're just going to take a look at two of these patients. Now, we're going to do a little comparison of SALT triage and START triage. Those are the two triages that are kind of the most popular, two triage methodologies that are kind of the most popular, at least in EMS. So we're going to kind of talk about those a little bit. Now, one of the differences between SALT triage and START triage is that SALT triage, even if the patient is, say, sitting on the ground or something like that, is unable to maybe walk and go over there, they still could be categorized as a green patient because their injuries may be non-life-threatening. And that's okay. And when we look at SALT triage or START triage, excuse me, see, even I get them mixed up. When we look at START triage really doesn't do that. START triage kind of starts off with the idea that if you are able to walk, you go over there, and that kind of puts them in a green category to start with. That's okay, but you really do have to kind of evaluate what might else be going on with your patient. Because you look at this gentleman here, and you may say, okay, well, yeah, if he can walk over there, he's a category green. But we also want to know some of his injuries. The other thing that SALT triage talks a little bit more about than START triage does is controlling bleeding. I think START triage really does kind of mention that, and they really should a little bit more, I think. But again, if you have someone who's got major bleeding and you're able to control that bleeding, that is a great way to sort of, if not save their life, potentially save them from becoming a category red patient even. All right, so let's look at this gentleman right here. Well, we can see he is up and he is moving. Looks like he could probably walk over to that green tarp over there, and we could say to him, hey, walk over to that green tarp. That's walking wounded for START triage. For SALT triage, they would say wave. Can they wave, right? So that's part of SALT triage. All right, so his respiratory rate, and what I always do is I always think of it in my mind as RPM, respiratory, perfusion, and then mentation. Okay, so respiratory, perfusion, mentation. So check his respirations. His respirations are 22. That's pretty good. Maybe he's a little upset because he's just been through a really nasty incident here. We don't need to reposition his airway because he's awake and alert and oriented, but if we were to do that, it'd be unchanged. We check his radial pulse. He's got a radial pulse of 114 beats a minute. Again, a little rapid, but he's been through kind of a traumatic incident here. His capillary refill, although not so great when it comes to adults, checking their capillary refill, we just get an idea of whether or not it looks like his perfusion is good, and it looks like his perfusion is pretty good. Okay? When it comes to major bleeding, there is no major bleeding that needs to be controlled. His mental status, he's able to follow simple commands, and so now we're going to go to assign him to a group. What do you think? I think this is a pretty easy one. We're going to categorize him as minor, and we're going to submit that. Look at that. There we are. We're correct. We got it. This patient is a category green. He would be classified category green. So let's go over to that patient over there. And this gentleman laying on the ground right here, okay? If we look at him, it doesn't really appear to be moving. I'm not sure if he's breathing. Oh, I do see some respiratory effort there. Okay, if we didn't see respiratory effort, usually with START triage, we say, reposition the airway, and if they don't continue to breathe, or if they don't breathe spontaneously, then in that case, they would be categorized as category black. With SALT triage, they put an expectant in there, right? And they ask you to sort of go, with the wounds given and our current resources, do we think this patient is going to survive? I'll be honest with you, that's not my favorite thing. I really don't like that because that puts a lot of guesswork into it. And when you're just trying to triage patients and get through and try to decide which ones are the worst off, which ones are the best off, I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go. But you may like that, and that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. All right, so let's check his respiration. He has a respiratory rate of 8. Ugh, that is not good, okay? Reposition his airway. He does begin breathing when we reposition his airway, or he breathes better. Radial pulse of 144 beats per minute. Yikes, that is really high. His capillary refill, 4 seconds. That's way too slow. If there's no major bleeding that we can see, it does look like there's some bleeding from his head, but it doesn't look like there's any major bleeding. His mental status, he is unable to follow simple commands. All right, I think we kind of know what group we're going to put this patient in. This patient is not deceased. He's not a delayed patient. He's an immediate patient. We're going to mark that, and we're going to mark him as category red, and we're going to move on to the next patient, okay? And that's sort of the best way to go. The idea of triage is not to immediately treat patients unless you're controlling major bleeding. We're not here to immediately treat patients. We're here to decide who has the best chance, who has the worst chance, and then we're going to get them over to those tarps over there, and then that's the rest of it is going to be up to the transport team to decide who goes where and how quickly they go out. Okay? Triage is all about mark, decide, quick. We get through that. We control bleeding if we can control bleeding, and then we sort of, unfortunately, we move on. We have to move on to the next person. If I stayed and just took care of one patient, that takes me out of, any potential other patients that might need me. Okay. All right. So, hey, thanks for all of the questions, all of the likes. Make sure you're liking and all of that kind of good stuff. I really appreciate it. We are up over 120 followers now, which is pretty awesome. I just started this channel like 3 days ago, so that's really great. Thank you all so much, and I'll see you on the next one. I'm going to go do some triage. All right. How you doing, sir? Can you hear me, sir? If you're able to, can you walk over to the green tarp there, sir? Well, he can't follow simple commands, so I'm going to say probably a category yellow to begin with, but let's go see what else is going on with him.